T-minus 17 seconds and counting. 15, 12, 11, 10, 9, 8, 7, 6. Go for main engine start. Main engine start. 2, 1. Booster ignition and liftoff of the Space Shuttle Discovery, returning to the space station, paving the way for future missions beyond.
Hi, happy Friday, everybody. Welcome to another conversation sheltered in place. Hope this episode finds everybody safe and healthy and managing during the various crises that we have going on right now. The purpose of these conversations is to help, or at least it started to help people deal with the COVID-19 crisis, to navigate it and to get out the other side stronger and more unified than ever. But we have a number of crises happening right now, and so what this conversation is about is thriving and navigating crises and being able to get through and to grow from the different challenges and problems that are facing us as a species. And I am really excited to welcome my friend Anousheh Ansari to this week's episode. If you don't know, Anousheh Ansari is the CEO of the XPRIZE Foundation, and this is the world's leader in designing and operating incentive competitions to solve humanity's grand challenges. Anousheh, along with her family, sponsored the organization's first competition, the Ansari XPRIZE, which was a $10 million competition, and that competition ignited a new era for commercial spaceflight. Since then, she has served on XPRIZE's board of directors. But prior to being named as the CEO of XPRIZE, Anousheh served as the CEO of Proteus Systems, a leading Internet of Things technology firm that she co-founded in 2006, and she continues to serve as the executive chairwoman. She captured the headlines around the world when she embarked on an 11-day space expedition, accomplishing her childhood dream of becoming the first female private space explorer, the first astronaut of Iranian descent, the first Muslim woman in space, and the fourth private explorer to space. Anousheh serves on the World Economic Forum's Global Future Council and has received numerous honors, including the World Economic Forum Young Global Leader, Ellis Island Medal of Honor, and the STEM Leadership Hall of Fame, among many others. She is a UNESCO Goodwill Ambassador and serves on the board of Jabil and Peace First, as well as several other not-for-profit organizations focused on STEM, education, and youth empowerment. And I could go on and on and on and on, but Anousheh would get very mad at me because she's a very modest and humble person. But I will also say that Anousheh, alongside Leland Melvin and Nicole Stott, and I started an organization called Constellation. And what Constellation is all about is using the example of space exploration to make the point that in space we are one unified crew. It doesn't matter where we come from, who we are, what our background is. We're one unified crew with a unified mission, and we should apply that same concept down here on Spaceship Earth as all the crew members of Spaceship Earth. Now I've talked all about the macro picture of Anousheh, but it's more than just big scale stuff too. Anousheh has an incredible love of life and love of people, and when she walks in the room, that shines forth. And I am really honored to be able to call Anousheh a dear friend. And so everyone, help me welcome Anousheh Ansari. Hi, Anousheh.
Hi, Ron. How are you? Thank you for having me. This was such a wonderful and colorful introduction. Thank you.
Yeah, it was very abbreviated. So thanks again for agreeing to come talk about things today. Like I said, we started out this project with the idea of helping people navigate COVID-19, and XPRIZE is an incredible organization. Can we start off the conversation by talking about what XPRIZE is doing? Well, maybe just an overview of what XPRIZE is in the first place for those folks that don't know what XPRIZE is, and then how XPRIZE is trying to help us through the COVID-19 crisis.
Oh, absolutely. As you said, I've been involved with XPRIZE for many, many years. First, as the sponsor of the first prize, and then on the board, and now as the CEO. But at the core, what we believe is that there are no problems in the world that we can't solve if we come together and collaborate. And the technology advancement and the innovation and ingenious in every one of us around the globe can solve those problems. So we try to tap into that energy, and we do that through competition. So we look at what are some of the grandest challenges, biggest problems, most complex problems in the world, and try to analyze those and find how we can bring about breakthroughs that would solve those problems. And then we frame a competition around those breakthroughs, identify those areas that we need to sort of push forward and solve, and put that into the framework of the competition, and launch a multi-million dollar competition to attract the best minds in the world to come and solve them. And that's how we go about it. And we've been very successful over the years. We focus on areas of exploration. That's where we started, in space, and the first prize, which was the Ansari X Prize. But we look at exploration of oceans, sort of anywhere on Earth, but also exploration of boundaries of human being, artificial intelligence, consciousness. But more pressing issues these days are issues of environment that we're very focused on, around carbon and carbon extraction, rainforests, and also we're looking at areas of equity. So we're looking at water, food, shelter, education, healthcare, access to basically the lower levels of Maslow's hierarchy of needs, and making sure that everyone has equitable and well-deserved access to all those needs across the globe. And we want to basically create a future of abundance for all, and sort of help build that future with all the entrepreneurs and scientists and those people who want to build that future together with us.
Yeah, so it's a very positive, collaborative effort. Can you talk about some of the success stories that you've had?
Yes. So because we just had the SpaceX launch recently, so I'm going to start with space. So the first prize, when it was launched, it was in the late 1990s, where space was only an area where governments played a role. And through the belief system that entrepreneurship and collaboration between public-private sectors, we can advance this. We started the competition of a $10 million X Prize to open up access to space. And we did that with $10 million, but the 10 million brought in $100 million of investment in the time that no one would even talk about investing in space. And that led to about 26 companies registering to compete. Mojave Aerospace won the prize in 2004. That 10 year that took to win the prize was spent a lot on actually changing policies that led to basically this group at FAA that now allows for launch licenses to be issued
Sure.
to companies like SpaceX. And now we went from no market at all in commercial space to a multi-billion dollar market that I think will be very successful. We have the Google Lunar X Prize caused a conversation around lunar economy now. We have also launched a lot of competitions in education. Last year we announced the winners of our global learning X Prize, which was um, a competition around an open source software that can teach kids without assistance of a teacher to learn on their own to read, write, and do basic arithmetic. And it was something that people told us it can be done. We did it in the most remote villages in Tanzania, 5,000 kids that uh, had no literacy at all, no access to school, and they got education that would have taken them 2.5 to 3 years if they had access to school in a matter of only 15 months. And now that we are shelter in place and schools are closed, the whole issue of online learning has become a bigger issue that everyone's looking at. And this is something we did, past few years. We've done prizes around healthcare system and doing telemedicine. Qualcomm tricorder XPRIZE was one of our successes as well, looking at how we can very quickly and efficiently be able to diagnose certain, diseases through remote testing, and using AI and machine learning. So a lot of these
That would come in handy
technologies.
right now with coronavirus.
Absolutely. One of the teams actually, Cloud DX, is using the technology that won the prize to be able to see if they can detect COVID through cough. So that's one of the teams actually working in this area right now.
Yeah. So I want to welcome everybody who's joining, and I want to remind everybody, put your questions in the comments. We'll see them, and we'll try and do the best we can to get to them and address them all. But just going back to XPRIZE and COVID, what are some of the specific things that XPRIZE is doing around trying to battle the virus?
We actually, when the pandemic hit the shores of US, we started looking at what we can do. Usually, our focus is on longer term prizes, but we didn't want to just sit still. So we launched the XPRIZE Pandemic Alliance because we have an amazing network of scientists and researchers and companies who are looking for solutions. So we invited everyone, and at the core, we put our data collaborative, which is a way for scientists and researchers and companies to share data and put that data together, and allow the group to collaborate and find solutions. So Anthem joined us, and together we launched the alliance, and now we have about over 90 companies and universities that have joined forces across the globe. And we're looking at solutions around uh, PPEs, to tests, to vaccines, to just the experience of, from a patient's perspective to a healthcare worker's perspective, and how things are changing. And looking also for what does it take for us to basically be able to get back out there and start resuming functionality in our everyday life, because the loss of jobs and loss of economic livelihood for a lot of people is becoming a critical issue long term. So we're trying to find solutions that will get us back on our feet.
So, Anousheh, what do you think what is it going to take to get us back, and what do you think the new normal will look like once we get out of this thing? I mean, I know it's a tough question, but from what you've seen and some of the things that are on the horizon, some of the things that are being brought up with XPRIZE and everything else, you've been around this type of thing quite a bit, and so I'm just curious. A lot of people are wondering. I'm wondering that. What is this? How are we going to get out of this, and what's it going to look like once we do?
It's a great question, and I think you will get a different answer different parts of the world. And it's what can we afford? It's a matter of balancing risk and reward, or looking at how long can we put the risk of losing life, or being ill against losing livelihood.
Mhm.
And it's a tough equation because it's being between a rock and a hard place.
Mhm.
There's no good side to the equation, but it is a tough choice that people are having to make around the world. But in countries like US and developed countries, where the leadership can take, and the government is in a position to help alleviate some of those pain points for people. Of course, we can be take measures to be safe, to be sheltered in place, to use protective gear, to do social distancing to protect ourselves. And those are really important steps in protecting ourselves and others who are at higher risk of contracting the disease. But there are also countries that cannot afford and don't have the resources to have those protections. So, it's right now we're dealing with the aftermath, and while it is good for us to try to deal with these things now, what I hope we do is continue this conversation around how can we avoid getting here, because dealing with the situation now is not the right way of dealing with problems. And usually as human beings, we're not good about long-term thinking. We sort of only look at short term, and then we deal with the crisis, and then we forget about it, and then we wait until the next crisis happens, and then we repeat the process. But we learned a lot from the previous pandemics, and unfortunately we didn't use a lot of those learnings here. So I'm hoping that we maybe create a resiliency playbook. Hopefully the policymakers, the institutions that are sort of the institutions that help countries deal with this situation will start looking at technologies and solutions that are being developed now, and put these things in place where the next time something like this can start, they can detect it before it becomes a
Right,
pandemic,
right,
and
right,
alleviate that. So
right. Stop it before, yeah.
exactly, that's what I hope will happen in the future. But individually, there is this fear that will change behavior. I think there is an acceleration of certain types of technologies that is happening. For example, this whole concept of distant learning, or online learning, that is accelerating tremendously. There is a acceptance of certain technologies that has accelerated this remote work from home, or the technologies like Zoom.
Right.
And I think these will accelerate in a also different way, where right now we only have audio and video interaction, but soon we will want to have more of our senses incorporated into this remote interaction.
Yeah,
We
like
have a
Mix and Mooks is suggesting avatars, VR conferences,
yes,
increasing the work from home culture too. So
absolutely. We have actually a competition called the Avatar, ANA Avatar XPRIZE, that we launched 3 years ago.
yeah,
And it was about, how can you have sort of the experience as with all of your senses remotely through a robotic system with haptics and AR and VR and AI and all these things incorporated into one combined system. So we
right.
never thought
Right.
about pandemic issues, but, it could become handy right now.
Yeah, I mean, this is a crisis, but it's also an opportunity to develop things that will make life better, regardless. Make us more resilient, make us better able to handle what comes down.
Oh, absolutely,
So
absolutely. There's a lot of opportunities for innovation and doing things differently, but also it will change the way we live our lives. So when we talk about loss of job, I don't think we will have all those jobs come back again when we get back to normal, and there will. I think some of those jobs are lost forever. I think automation is now on a more accelerated path. Autonomous driving, automation in factories, automation in our supply chain, and and we need to think about how can we reskill some of those individuals to be able to look at new jobs, and maybe we should even look at the whole concept of work and workplace, and all of that in a different light in future.
yeah. So how about we switch gears for a second? Because I think you have a really unique perspective on some of the unrest that's going on in our country right now. I mean, I'm not comparing things, but you did live through the Iranian Revolution. You were exposed to a lot of unrest, a lot of civil unrest, and protests and things like that. Again, I'm not making any comparison other than uh, looking at this from your perspective, from the perspective of somebody who's lived through such a harrowing situation, and what lessons, if any, can we apply to what's going on right now, and how we've got a lot of issues and challenges in our country. The pandemic is just one of them, and so we're living through I think, a huge transition period. I think we're living through the great transition right now. And so from your perspective, what are some things that we can think about?
As you said, I've had my own personal experience of living through unrest and riots and demonstrations. I was very young and sort of taken by all of that by surprise, and then the war came after that. But I guess some lessons and things that I believe in personally is that violence can never be a solution to anything. I have never seen anything good come out of any war or any act of violence against anyone. Even if you want to fight against something, using violence to fight it never wins. So I applaud the fact that a lot of the demonstrations are peaceful demonstrations. I think it's important to voice your an opinion and your position against an injustice, and we should continue doing that. And we should identify if there is elements that tries to portray something as a violent act to try to stop that, because that's when it muddies the water and it dilutes from the important message that's trying to be communicated. The other thing that I've learned and that is important is leadership is absolutely critical in these situations. What I've seen, in the past is sometimes a very important movement gets started, especially with very good-hearted young people, enthusiastic. But if there's no leadership with specific action spearheading that movement, it ends up opening up a passage that is clear, and someone can come and basically, for the lack of a better word, steal that sort of opportunity.
Yeah.
Yeah. And we've seen that happen in many of the movements that has happened in the past in history in Middle East, for example. So it's important for the people who are actually spearheading a movement, who are coming out with a message, to have specific asks, to have a specific plan, to be able to say, here's what we want to see happen, and then keep at it, because it doesn't end with just demonstrations. It's demonstrations, and then follow up with the organizations behind it to make sure that whatever action was promised through those demonstrations actually happen in
All right.
policy and voting is another thing. This country is great because it's one of the few countries that truly has a free election, and making sure that we preserve this free election, that we preserve the right to the election, and we exercise that right, more importantly.
Mm-hmm.
Not voting is not voicing dismay with the candidate. Actually, you have to vote, you have to make your voice known, and I think this election, more than any other election, is important to actually be out there and vote and make your voice known about how do you see the future of this country and where you want it to go.
Yeah, there's an analogy that I use all the time. You might have heard me use it about the asteroid coming at the Earth. Because I believe everybody, or the vast majority of people at least, desire to leave this place a little bit better than they found it. They want to make the world a better place, right? And so I often ask myself, why do people who want to make the world a better place not do more? And I think one of the reasons is people don't think they can make a difference. They just don't understand how incredibly powerful they are. And so to illustrate that, I usually talk about an asteroid, a killer asteroid coming to Earth, that if it hits the Earth, it'll kill every living thing on the planet. And if we knew about that asteroid far enough out, we could send a small spacecraft and with the force of a feather, just give it a little nudge. And that little nudge over the course of its travel to the Earth could result in thousands of miles of missed distance, saving every living thing on the planet. But when you talk about voting, it's the same analogy, because a lot of people don't vote because they say, what does one vote matter? What is it? It's not going to make a big difference. But if you think about it in the terms of the asteroid coming to the Earth, where if you have two candidates and you have nudges on both sides of the asteroid, one steering one way and one steering the other way, you see that it does make a difference. It does. Everybody's makes a difference, because if yours is not there, then it's going to be counteracted by a nudge in the opposite direction. So,
Oh,
um,
absolutely. And we even, I mean, I've seen in the past couple of elections, a lot of, at least in the past elections, especially, there were few states that, it was like a few handful of votes actually swung a few small areas votes. So it is important. Every single vote counts. And I think it's a right that a lot of people lost their lives to gain that
exactly,
right. So
exactly.
exercising it is important to make sure that it's not taken away.
So we are not only incredibly powerful as individuals, we're exponentially more powerful when we join together in mass, and collaborate together and work together towards common causes. And again, I'll state it again. I think everybody, or at least the vast majority of people, want to make the world a better place. And it's just what you're seeing is differences of opinions on how to do that. I think. I mean, but so we've got people joining in from all over the world. And again, I'm going to encourage everybody, ask your questions. We'd love to get you as part of this conversation. This isn't a one-way interview show. It's not even an interview. It's a conversation between two friends, and hopefully more friends that are tuning in. So we've got a lot to talk about and a little bit of time. But I do want to, before we leave this topic, because it's so important. One of the things that I've been just trying really hard to get to the root problem of why we have why there's so many problems. Why is there so much unrest? Why is there so, even with before all the civil unrest, just with the pandemic itself, why was there so much differences of opinion on what we should do, and what was necessary, and et cetera. And I think one of the things, and it's going to be really hard to explain this, but I think part of the seeds to this awareness came from being in space. And I don't know, you've been in space as well, Anousheh. I don't know if you had this, but what seemed to become less important, or in some cases even disappear, was this illusion of separation. When you zoom out to the perspective that you have in space, all of those perceived differences blur into not only insignificance, but they blur into nothing. They disappear. And we all think that we're these individuals walking around with names, which is true, we are, but we're also deeply, deeply interdependent and interconnected on a level that we don't normally see. And it's not, yes, we are distinct and individual, but we have this underlying unity that, at some point during the evolution of humanity, we developed these things called egos. And the ego is what masks this truth, this underlying truth from us. It's what, if we acknowledge this underlying, it degrades our egos, and our egos have a hard time dealing with that. And so maybe we could, dig a little deeper on that for a second. And because I know you have some really interesting thoughts on this. And I mean, can you see a path forward for us to unify more as a species?
Um, I hope so, and I think so. I agree with you. We had the very unique and wonderful experience of being able to have that perspective. And I think we are all individuals, and the connecting factor for us becomes the Earth. That becomes our home, the connecting factor, the thing that we all share, the common factor. And when that becomes the only unifying factor for us, and nothing else matters. And conflicts and all these issues arises when we try to box ourselves into all these different categories. Every time we draw a line and we put someone on one side and ourselves on the other side, there are conflicts that are bound to happen. So it's important to try to avoid as much as possible drawing lines. I say this, and sometimes people are surprised. Growing up as a young kid in Iran, I was fortunate. I had a family who um, was really busy, and they never spent too much time trying to sort of tell me that I'm a girl, that I should do this or not do that. So whenever I did this, I never was thinking that I'm a girl. Should I be doing this? Should I be studying this? Should I be interested in this or that? And I never, and that became part of my personality. So when I make a decision, when I'm acting on something, when I decide on a path, I never put a gender lens or a religious lens or anything of sort on my decision, because I just see myself as a human being. When I talk to people, when I interact with people, I do the same. I never look at them and think about, okay, this person is, American or Iranian. Are they Christian or Muslim? Are they white or black? Are they, so I just look at them as human beings. And that's, I think, a perspective we gain when we're in space. And if people can just see each other for who they are, we're all human beings, and treat ourselves with the dignity that each human being deserves, then I think we will have completely different way of dealing with each other.
Yeah, I agree. And I'll pop up something here. I guess you won't be able to read the whole thing, maybe. But basically, we need to educate ourselves about each other. And you guys can read that in the comments from Steve. Thanks, Steve, for sending that. But the bottom line is, we need to, in order to educate ourselves about other cultures and religions and ethnicities, and we have to be willing to listen. which goes back to the evolutionary development of the ego. So we have to undo that a little bit in order to listen sometimes. I do want to pop up another comment from Makes and Mooks. Elon mentioned we should form a space cult. What are your opinions? I guess it depends on what you mean by a space cult. So,
I mean, it's anything that draws a line. So if the cult means that there is a line of people who like space and go on this side, and people who don't like it, I think everyone belongs to a space cult, and everyone belongs to a Earth cult, and we all should work together on that.
Right. We should form a space cult. It's called the Cult of Earthlings.
Cult of Earthlings. Yeah. It was interesting, Ron. The day that the launch was happening, there were also a lot of riots happening, if you remember, on Saturday. Exactly. And I was, at the moment we were all looking up for, even though I couldn't see the launch for whatever reason, I was looking up, and I know this from experience that every time someone just looks up, even when you're on Earth, when you look up, it almost has the same factor, because space, even when you're looking up from Earth, connects us, because the star systems, at least on the northern hemisphere and southern, we see the same stars. So when we look up, we're all seeing the same thing. We're connected. Right. We don't see the borders when we're looking up. Same thing from when we're looking down from space, we see us as one. So why is it that when we're looking up, we see ourselves connected and as one, but when we look down and we look at each other, we sort of forget about that connectedness? We just need to keep that at heart and in mind when we deal with each other on an everyday basis, and accept each other. I mean, we don't even need to understand every culture and every point of view. We just need to accept that every person has the right to their own opinion, as long as we don't harm each other and we don't create problems for each other. We can believe whatever we want. I can believe in, aliens, and I do. And
I can hear the tweets now.
Anousheh said she believes in aliens.
So let me share this from Liam. An article on The Verge was posted a few days ago with the headline, "A rocket launch can't unite us until the space world acknowledges our divisions." It speaks to a sentiment I've heard a lot in the past week. So I don't think a space launch is going to solve our problems, but so motivation to change, I think, is motivated primarily by two factors: fear on one hand, or awe and wonder on the other hand. And going back to the asteroid analogy, a launch into space is a nudge from the awe and wonder side of the equation, not the fear side of the equation. So no, it's not going to solve everything, but it's going to help. It's a unifying event that people can rally around because it's an event that is from a foundation of awe and wonder. Versus a foundation of fear. And so the more things that we can rally around and unify around that are based on awe and wonder, and our shared awe and wonder, and the shared beauty, the appreciation for the beauty of our world and for our accomplishments as a species, et cetera, that's going to serve to bring us together. And that's going to open up avenues for dialogue and cooperation and collaboration versus what the other side. So going back to that analogy of the nudges on either side of the asteroid, that was a good nudge of the asteroid, not a bad nudge. And so we just need more good nudges. I don't know what you think about that, Anousheh.
I agree with that. And also the other way I look at it, and this is something that in my personal experience of just looking at the space program in general and International Space Station and my time on the space station, is that, space station has been a very unique experience where, for whatever reason, every country, even countries that are, sort of at conflict with each other, they can come together and they collaborate. And when the astronauts are up on the space station, for whatever reason, we can put all differences aside and we're all there, and we know that we have to work together because we're in this unique environment that our survival depends on our collaboration and working closely together and putting our differences aside. So if we can do that up there, why can't we do that here? Because it's the same thing here. This whole planet is a closed ecosystem that we have to work together to be able to live peacefully. And once we actually realize that and understand that, I think the fact that we need to put our differences aside becomes like a matter of fact. But our problem is that we see it in that micro system, but we can't look at it in the macro concept of the world.
It's interesting when children are in the home. Normally we define home as places that we live, and we identify our tribe, if you will, as our brothers and sisters and our mom and dad, right? But as we become adults, that rapidly expands beyond our home, right? Our house, I should say, our house, and rapidly our household. And I think right now humanity is kind of in the awkward teenage years, and we're still trying to define, our tribe, our family, as those that we share a home with, and in the broader context, that usually is, our nation, our religion, our political party, or whatever it is. But I think it's long past time that we need to cross the bridge into adulthood and realize that our home extends to the entire planet. And until we take on a planetary mindset and build a planetary civilization, we are going to do nothing more than slap band-aids on the problems that we have, including virus mitigation and civil rights and everything else. We're just slapping band-aids on it until we realize the truth. And one of the things that we've talked about in previous conversations on Conversations Sheltered in Place is that for the first time probably in human history, the slogan or the word, we're all in this together, is not a cliche. We are literally all in this together in COVID-19. There's not a single person on the planet that's not affected in one way or another by this virus. And so that should have been a wake-up call and a call to action to take on a more unified existence, to unify our species around reality. And, I hesitate to quote from Martin Luther King right now, because I know that there's a lot of misquotes going on and things taken out of context. But there is just the most poignant quote that Martin Luther King, Dr. Martin Luther King, gave back in 1967 in the Christmas Sermon in Peace, which was a year before Apollo 8. And so Apollo 8 gave us this view of the Earthrise, which which really showed for the first time the true reality of our world. But Dr. King knew that without ever going to space. And when he talked about we're not going to have peace until we recognize the basic fact of the interrelated structure of all reality. What affects one directly affects all indirectly. We are all deeply, deeply interconnected, interdependent. Until we brace that basic fact, we're not going to be doing anything but slapping band-aids on things. So.
No, I agree with you, and I think you know, the pandemic has shown us this. I think when you look at Dr. King's teachings and what he did, and um, not just during the Civil War in U.S., but he during the same time he voiced his dismay about the same type of injustice across the globe in
Around the
Vietnam.
world,
So
yes.
so it wasn't that he was only concerned
Yep,
about discrimination here in his home world.
exactly.
He was against discrimination anywhere,
Right,
against anyone, and
right.
and that's what is to me very unique in his teaching and the way he approached injustice, and that's why I'm when I look at what's happening and violence, which is another you know unique human emotions that causes a lot of unrest, war, and problems that we face here on earth. I have never seen violence lead to anything good. You look at Middle East, where I come from. um, this type of violence and hatred has been just going on for centuries, and unless someone just tries to stop this and put an end to it, um, it will just continue on this endless loop.
Well, one of the stages of grief is anger, right? And if you and that you have to go through the stages of grief to heal from grief, right? And so one of the stages is anger, and I think a lot of the violence that we see is because people are in the stage of anger, and if you respond to anger with anger, that doesn't get you out to the other more productive stages of grief. It
Right.
just keeps you in this endless cycle of anger. Uh, so yeah,
Just like I love the quote from Gandhi, an eye for an eye will leave the whole world
you're
blind.
blind.
Right?
Exactly.
That
Yeah,
that's exactly what I've seen happen in Middle
yeah,
East, and no matter
yeah.
where you try to do that, it will never lead to anything good. No good outcome can come from it.
Right, right. Let's see. Should we? There is a note here from Joseph. If if you had the award to fly one of the new commercial spacecrafts were offered to you both, would you go back to space? I think that's a very. There's a lot of hard questions. That's a really easy question.
Yeah, that's like, of course, I would go
Right,
right now.
right. Yes, I don't. I'm sure you miss it. I miss space immensely. Um, if I had to shelter in place, the ISS would be a good place to shelter in place, I think.
Anytime, anytime. Pandemic or not, I would do shelter in place and ISS
Yeah.
anytime.
So how can people find out more about the XPRIZE Foundation?
You can definitely go to our website, xprize.org, and sign up for our newsletter and or sign up on our social media, and you will get updates. We just launched a new podcast, not going back to normal, and talking about some of our activities related to how we see the a new normal, how we see the future changing, and how we have this unique opportunity right now to actually not just let things happen randomly, but since we are changing, why don't we take an active role in shaping it in the way we want to see the future changed? So we would love to have ideas. We're asking the world to give us their ideas and how we can shape that. We have some exciting competitions we're launching related to solutions with rapid testing. If you're researcher, scientist, entrepreneur, innovator in new designs of keeping us safe while we're out there, how can we get back in places where there is a crowd, but we can still be safe together? So we're looking for a lot of ideas. So we really look forward to incorporating a lot of these innovations into getting us back out there and working together. But we have 3 or 4 new competitions that are coming up. So keep an eye open for those competitions and participate. We're always looking for judges and advisors. Join us, as in any capacity as you like. So we love
Yeah.
that.
And what I love about XPRIZE is XPRIZE really balances the tension between competition and collaboration, right? And competition is great if it's productive, constructive competition, which leads to new products, better services, et cetera, et cetera. But what we're seeing in the world is destructive competition, where people are not playing by the rules. They're cheating, lying, stealing, and rigging the systems and stacking the cards and all that stuff, which does not help the overall the body of society. It hurts it. And so I think XPRIZE really does a good job of merging collaboration and competition together. And competition is a great motivator, especially if there's a big prize, but it also fosters collaboration.
Yeah, I think the uniting factor is that at the core of the competition, it's not just the money, it's a mission.
Yeah.
So all the teams who are competing at the end, they really care about the mission, which, for example, is to be able to take carbon out of the atmosphere. It's about, be able to teach kids, how to read or write. So it's the success of one team is the success of all the teams. And we also behind the scene connect teams together. We've a lot of times we actually, if we see one team is strong on one side and another team strong on the other side, we introduce them together. It's like, maybe if you guys merge together, you have a better chance of winning, for example. So we look at it as a co-opetition,
Yeah. Right.
we believe that it's important. And what we've seen is the teams competing also see it in the same light, that the mission, accomplishing the mission, the
Exactly.
task of the competition is more important than just one team winning.
Yeah, exactly. I think you made an incredibly important point, and that's why the space program works. Is because when we're in space, we're one crew, right? We're not the Russian crew or the Japanese crew or whatever crew. We're just the crew, and the overarching mission of the crew is to achieve their mission objectives. And so all of those things, all of those perceived differences that we have fall to the wayside when it comes to accomplishing the mission. And so that mission mindset needs to be brought down to the Earth's surface, and the XPRIZE Foundation is doing just that. And so I think that's great. Hey, just I want to pop this up real quick. So Makes and Mooks is saying that we humans are parasites on the superorganism, I guess, known as humanity or on Earth. And I think what is correct about that statement is that each individual human is but a cell in the overarching superorganism known as humanity. And we, as individuals, have a choice to become a cancerous parasitic cell, or we could become a white blood cell in the immune response of our planet, leading to a healing of our planet. And I think that's each and every one of our responsibility to make that choice and make it on a moment-to-moment, day-to-day basis of which direction they want to nudge the asteroid. and so what do you think about that?
Oh, absolutely. I a lot of time when we talk about saving the planet, and you and I have talked about this, it's not about saving the planet. The planet doesn't need
Yeah,
saving.
it's
Actually
gonna be
trying to
fine.
save ourselves, so we can be a bad bacteria or virus, and the planet will make sure that the antibodies of the planet will attack us and get rid of us, or we can be a good bacteria, and it will protect us and help us grow and thrive. So it's how we live in this environment and in harmony with our environment that will determine our future. And it's up to us.
Exactly. And that was a great question, great point. So we're getting kind of close to the end of the hour. So I wanted to, in the time remaining, just, is there any words of advice or any strategy that you can offer folks for, this period of isolation, this period of crisis, this period of uncertainty, of navigating, what's going on, and equally important, if not more importantly, how we can use this period as a time for growth and improvement and to come out the other side better than when we went in. How can we make 2020 the greatest year in history, not the year that it started out to be looking like it could be?
It's a great question because 2020 happens to be a very, I think, pivotal year in history of humanity. A lot of things happened, a lot of things are happening and changing. And we can, as I said, we can sit here and just watch it change, or we can decide to be an active member of shaping the way it changes. So what I would say, depending on what you're doing or what your capabilities are, or how much you want to be involved in it, I would sit back and sort of take account of where we are, each one of us in our lives, and what are the networks and resources and people, or our jobs or our companies that we're involved with, and how individually we can help shape those things in the future after the pandemics and the direction it will go, whether it's looking at how our companies and ourselves can function in the new world, how we can be innovative in the way we function, and what new tools and capabilities we can offer the world that would help the world in this new reality that we live, or taking even a longer term perspective of the problems that we've been sort of exposed to. I think this pandemic sort of gave us a glimpse into the potential future, and now we have an opportunity to avoid some of those things. So this
Right.
pandemic can become something that happens every 6 months if we don't do the right things.
Right.
So this is not like it happened and we got rid of it and it's gone. This type of pandemics, if we don't do the right things, can happen much more often. So let's learn from it, and let's make sure that we don't forget about it once we have the vaccine, that we actually do put things together, and you can become a voice, an active member of making sure that those learnings are not forgotten, and incorporate those in whatever you're involved with. And then personally in your own, in your own life, it may be a time that if you happen to be impacted by the loss of job, it may be an opportunity for learning and growth, and you can always, I always look at silver lining and try to find a positive. So if you have been impacted negatively, also look at it as, how can I change this into a positive, and find ways to learn some new skills, learn something new, get involved with some good movement, something that will give you some positive energy, that will open up your mind to a new group of people, new networks, new opportunities, and perhaps you will find something that will open a new door for you, and find a new way of using your talent. So I think each individual can find a new path out of this that will help you personally, or help the world you live in different ways.
I mean, we're paying a horrible, terrible, heartbreaking price for this virus. I mean, we're just in the U.S. alone, we're over 100,000 dead from this, and it would be, that's horrible, but it would be even more horrible if that price that we're paying is not for some benefit in the future.
Oh, absolutely.
And so we have an opportunity to do that, and I think and you talked about this, this mission mindset of the overarching mission. That if you have an overarching mission, that gives you purpose, and if you have purpose in your life that motivates you, it actually serves to boost your immune system, making you less susceptible to contracting the virus, or better able to battle it if you have it. And so we all need to find that purpose, but we need to find that purpose, and we need to act on that purpose from a foundation of awe and wonder, and not from a foundation of fear. Because there's a lot of people that are searching for that purpose. They're searching for that mission. They're searching for that, but they're doing it out of a foundation of fear. And that's what leads to destruction. That might work in the short term, but it's not going to work in the long term. The only way to have long-term lasting change is to do it for the right reasons, to do it for out of love and out of compassion and out of empathy and out of a desire to leave this place a little bit better than found. And I know, Anousheh, you know that oh so well. And I thank you so much for sharing that wisdom and everything that you're doing with XPRIZE. You guys are changing the world, and you're changing it in a profoundly positive way. And we all thank you for that.
Thank you. And we don't do it by ourselves. We rely on all the people who are watching us right now, and all the ones who are not watching, but they have great ideas and they're willing to, bet a lot on those ideas and try to attack the problem. So thank you for having me. It was great to chat with you.
Yeah, and thanks to everybody for the great comments. We'll try and get to them after the fact. Go back and we'll look at them and try and answer them. And thanks for tuning in. And everybody stay safe out there. And let's work together to get over all these problems and challenges that we have. Because the only way we're going to get through them is to get through them together. So, thanks everybody.
Thank you. Have a great weekend.
Everybody, you too, Anousheh, and everybody else.